Welcome to our weekday reflection this Wednesday the 22nd of July. The theme that I've given for my reflection today is there is no such thing as scrap in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. No such thing as scrap in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. And the text that I'm referencing is John 21 verses 15 following. When they finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time, Jesus said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself, and you went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." In 1924, English artist William Walcott was visiting a friend's office in New York. And as he entered into his friend's office, he saw a piece of wrapping paper on his friend's desk and was inspired to use it for a sketch. And he said to his friend, "May I please have that piece of paper?" And his friend responded by asking why he wanted it. "It's not sketching paper, it's just scrap paper." But Wilcock took that scrap piece of paper and he made two very simple sketches. Later that year, one of them sold for £250 and the other sold for £500, princely sums of money in 1924. Nothing is scrap in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. In the hands of God, there is no such thing as an ordinary person. God is like the great artist who is creating a treasure of great worth with what many people might regard as scrap material, worthless scraps. The greatest investment that we can make is to invest in the lives of other people. That's what God does. He invested his Son in humanity, empowering us to become more than we are capable of becoming on our own. And we need to likewise invest in the lives of other people. The Dead Sea is a popular tourist attraction for several reasons, one of which is because it is almost impossible to drown in the Dead Sea. Even non-swimmers float because of the high concentration of minerals in the water. Fresh water flows in from the River Jordan, but there is no outlet for that water to flow out. And so the water accumulates and eventually evaporates, leaving behind the concentration of mineral deposits. The salt content in the Dead Sea is over 33%, which is 8.6 times higher than the ocean seas, which have a salt concentration of only 3.6%. It demonstrates the importance for us not only to receive but to give out. God never intended for us to be reservoirs that simply took in or continue to take in. Rather, we are to be living rivers, flowing with blessings to others. Unfortunately, our desire to protect ourselves and our assets for fear of losing them often causes us to focus on taking in and on accumulating rather than giving out. And that's often particularly true in times such as this, where the uncertainty brought about by COVID-19 creates a fear about our own future and our own security. And we become so obsessed with our own well-being and security that we display little or no regard for the well-being of those around us. You know, we read in the scriptures the story of the Good Samaritan, how the priest and the Levi saw this injured man laying by the side of the road, beaten and near death. And yet they walked on by. They failed to stop and render assistance because to have done so would have been to have put their own lives at risk. It was easier to keep on walking by and as quickly as possible. And it's very easy for us to be critical of the actions of the priest and the Levi because we tell ourselves that we would never leave an injured person lying by the side of the road. But how quickly do we retreat into our own bubble when there is a personal threat to our own health and well-being? How quickly we turn to hoarding food or even toilet paper without regard to the needs of others the moment we think that we might miss out. None of us are immune from such behaviour, not even the bravest and the most confident. The Apostle Peter was full of assurances that he would never leave or forsake Jesus. And we read in Luke 22, Peter saying to Jesus, "Lord, I would never leave you or forsake you. I would die with you." Luke 22 verse 32. "I'd never leave you or forsake you. I would die with you." And yet the moment of truth, when it came, Peter denied Jesus not once, but 3 times. See, not only were the priest and Levi ensuring their own safety, but they could justify their actions on the grounds that they were busy people. There were important tasks to be done. They had places to go and things to do. And likewise, we all know the pressures of the urgent. There are things that we simply need to get done. We would like to assist, but there's work to be done. There's meetings to attend. And how often do we allow the urgent to overtake the important things in our lives? How often do we yield to the demands and the pressures of life? We may say that God, family, and friends are our priority. They are the most important things in our lives. And yet when you look closer at our lives, we see that those so-called priorities are not reflected in the time that we give to them. So like the priest and Levi, we are not only consumed by our own welfare and safety, we're often consumed by busy agendas so that we simply fail to notice the person in need on the side of the road, the person who has been beaten and left behind by life and discarded by the side of the road. And perhaps COVID-19 has provided us with an opportunity to stop, to think of that one person who would benefit from us simply coming alongside to encourage and support them. The first African American to play Major League Baseball was Jackie Robinson. He played for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And Jackie faced constant jeering, heckling and racial slurs, even death threats whenever he played. And on one occasion when he was playing at his home ground in Brooklyn, Robinson made an error and the crowd turned on him screaming abuse. And as he stood there humiliated on second base. And at that point, Pee Wee Reese, also known by his proper name as Harold Peter Henry, Pee Wee Reese ran over and stood next to him and put his arm around his shoulder. Together they faced the crowd, at which point the crowd went silent. Years later, when Robinson was inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame, he stated, "It was Reese's arm around my shoulder that saved my career." How many lives have been saved by someone pausing long enough to notice someone else in need and to stand by their side and put their arm around their shoulder? How often do we simply make a difference by standing beside another person? We don't have to have any special words of wisdom. We don't have to have any qualifications as a counsellor. We simply need a willingness to stand shoulder to shoulder with another person in their hour of need. In John 21, that reading that I read at the beginning, we see Jesus coming alongside a broken and humiliated Peter and placing his arm around Peter's shoulder and commissioning him to be the foundation of the church. At that moment, Jesus set the stage for Peter to be inducted into God's Hall of Fame. Jesus took a broken, humiliated, and ashamed man who may very well have faced not only the hostility of the crowd, but the criticism of his fellow disciples and believers, and turned him into a priceless treasure. There's a beautiful poem by Maya Welsh entitled "The Touch of the Master's Hand." And I just want to share this poem with you. "'Twas battered and scarred, and the auctioneer thought it scarcely worth his while to waste much time on the old violin, but he held it up with a smile. "What am I bidden, good folks?" he cried. "Who'll start the biddin' for me? $1, then two, only two, $2, and who'll make it three? $3 once, $3 twice, going for three, but no." From the room far back, a grey-haired man came forward and picked up the bow. Then, wiping the dust from the old violin, he tightened the loosened strings. He played a melody pure and sweet as a carolling angel sings. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, said, "What am I bid for the old violin?" And he held it up with a bow. $1,000, and who'll make it two? 2,000, and who'll make it three? 3,000 once, 3,000 twice, and going, gone, he said. The people cheered, but some of them cried. "We do not quite understand. What changed its worth?" Swift came the reply, "The touch of the Master's hand." And many a man with his life out of tune and battered and scarred with sin is auctioned cheap by the thoughtless crowd, much like the old violin. A mass of porridge, a glass of wine, a game, and he travels on. He is going once and going twice, he's going and almost gone. But the Master comes, and the foolish crowd never can quite understand the worth of a soul that is changed by the touch of the Master's hand. You know, no matter what we've done or how we've failed, may we realise that there is no such thing as scrap in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. And may that knowledge of knowing that when we are in the hands of the Master, he can turn us into a priceless treasure, no matter how scarred, battered or broken we may be. And may that knowledge therefore encourage us at this time to pause long enough to think about those around us, and perhaps that person in need who's been left abandoned by the side of the road, battered and scarred and bruised. And may we express and display the same grace and love that Jesus does by simply coming alongside them and placing our arm around their shoulder and standing with them in their time of need.
So may we know God standing beside us, his arm around our shoulder in our time of need and encouraging us. And may we be encouraged to do so to those in need. Well, thank you for joining us for our weekday reflection. And I look forward to seeing you again on Friday.